What's up, everybody? Welcome to Friendship Frequency. This is a podcast where we talk about our real life struggles and what has worked for us. We get real, we get vulnerable, and discuss our everyday lives, and we invite you to go on this journey to better yourself along with us. I'm Tab Johnson.
And I'm Aaron Windhorn.
And this is who we are, and this is what we do. So tonight's topic is all about life after addiction and those that it affects. There's probably several people, myself included, that are listening to this or watching this episode and in some way, shape, or form have been affected by either their own addiction or someone else's addiction, whether it be alcohol, drugs, whatever. This is obviously a topic that is going to be near and dear to a lot of people. And so we just want to put it out there that you're not alone and we have resources. And we hope that this helps you. Tonight, we also have a special guest along with us.
Woo-woo.
Right? Whoop, whoop. He is someone that has become very near and dear to Aaron and myself. A great mentor, a great leader, just a good thought leader for us. And we're super excited to have him on. And for those of you that don't know, his name is Justin Murrell. Justin, welcome.
Thank you.
He definitely has a lot of insight regarding this topic. So let's get into it. Let's do it.
So Justin, I come from the recovery world myself. 11 years clean and sober. Back in April.
Woo-hoo!
Congrats.
Thank you. We've become pretty close friends through, the side business plus, learning that we were both in recovery. And it's just awesome to always meet and hear people's stories. So if you could grace us and the audience with a little bit about who you are or what you've been through, and we'll start there.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me. I feel honored to be a part of this, and congratulations on this new platform. I think there couldn't be a better team of people to be doing this, and I'm excited to help promote this. I think a lot of people need to hear your guys' insight and the subject matter, so thank you. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Justin Murrell. I'm 42 years old. I got 3 kiddos, and I live here in Fort Collins, Colorado. So if we go back, I graduated from a place in Washington State called Enumclaw. Right after graduation, I joined the United States Navy, and I was a gunner's mate.
Go Navy.
Yeah. And just to kind of preface the subject matter of this, I'm a recovering alcoholic. I just Googled how many days. 2,031 days. So a little over 5.5 years sober from
That's
drugs
incredible.
and alcohol. But it started way back then. So I'll just start with, I remember the first time I had a drink, and it was at a family function. It was a family reunion, and one of my aunts made me a duck fart, which is like Kahlua or something like that. And I remember feeling amazing. And I could not believe that I could feel that way on demand. So if I were to reverse engineer my struggles in life, I'll go back to there. And alcoholism runs in my family. If you guys have never heard of ACA, which is Adult Children of Alcoholics, it's an amazing resource because it's all learned. A lot of it's learned behavior. So even in high school, I was an alcoholic. We had parties and big high school parties. I would get a fifth of hot damn cinnamon schnapps. That would be my drink.
Oh my God.
I know.
Oh.
I'd run around, drink that. act like a fool. My senior party was busted, was the very first party busted by the King County Party Patrol, which is Washington State Patrol, King County Sheriff's Office, Washington State Liquor Board. Literally, we're at a huge bonfire up in Black Diamond, Washington, in a clearing, and I'm taking a leak at like the tree line, and there's a helicopter. And I used to always trip all the time, and I'm like, "That's the cops! They're watching us!" And literally, that thing came down to like 30 feet, plastic solo cups flying, spotlight turns on, and it's this is the King County Sheriff's Department. So, um, yeah, we got busted, and they made us pour out our keg. So, high school, barely made it through high school, but I did join the United States Navy, where uh, I think the culture is drinking, which is weird because I was stationed in Everett, Washington for 2 years, stationed on a destroyer, and we did counter drug ops in South America, chasing cocaine cowboys in big cigarette boats, moving cocaine, and but that's where I fell in love with health and fitness. That's like I wanted to be a personal trainer. I was really into bodybuilding. I wasn't really built for it, but I was. It's something I always wanted to do. So in the Navy, I think one of the reasons I didn't like fully. I mean, I was an alcoholic, always a binge drinker, but I would hit foreign ports and not drink at all because of the calories. And that was a really good governor on my drinking because I don't know where I'd be if my the way that I drank as an adult happened then. So stationed on a destroyer for 2 years. Uh, like I said, went down to South America. Did counter drug ops for the United States Coast Guard. I played war games with some of the South American countries, and then I decommed that ship. I flew to the Persian Gulf in 2003. Wow. And I was there for Operation Iraqi Freedom, Operation Enduring Freedom. I was there doing during Ooh and Ah night when we started the whole Iraq thing, and left the Navy in September 2004. I worked construction for a hot minute, building gunite swimming pools, in ground fancy swimming pools, tying rebar, pouring concrete, did all that. And then I think it was 2005, I started as a corrections officer. I worked in a small town city of Buckley. I worked in their jail for almost a year and then got hired as a patrol officer. So I was patrol for 2 years, lateraled to the city of Puyallup, and started there, I think, in around 2008. While I was in law enforcement, I was part of the Metro Riot team, the bicycle team. I worked special investigations unit, worked undercover, did undercover work for the feds, and that whole time I would go to work and then party on the weekends with friends and family and coworkers. And then when I worked undercover, right before I started working undercover, I got in a fight for life. Dude tried to steal my gun. I got my nose broken, shoulder came out of my socket, and it really rattled me. Like that was the whole time in the military, never had an issue with PTSD. As a matter of fact, during my stint in the military, I saw so many people manipulating the system, saying they had PTSD, that I honestly thought PTSD was bullshit. And it wasn't until later that people were like, dude, you got PTSD. But it was more from my work in law enforcement than it was in the military, for 100%. I had major shoulder surgery, and that's where I was exposed to opiates. And again, first time I took those pills, I was like, I cannot believe that you can feel like this on demand. Like a couple Percocets and a couple beers, dude, I was untouchable. And then started abusing those with my alcoholism. And in law enforcement, still, I got arrested for a DUI. And then when that went down in law enforcement, If you admit that you had a problem, there were no issues, whatever, they let you go to treatment. They come back, they evaluate you, they tell you if you can keep your job. And so that's what I did. And you guys can unwind this later if you want. But when I went to treatment the first time, I was checking the box. I really did want to get better. But when I went there, I went with a bunch of other cops and firefighters. So one of the biggest things of getting sober and staying sober is being honest. And more
Mm,
importantly, being honest with yourself.
mm.
And I went to treatment talking about my alcoholism, and I thought just my script problem. I mean, they were being prescribed to me. When I worked for the feds later, I found out that they called my doctor the Candy Man because of
Wow.
the way he prescribed. Yeah, absolutely insane. And so I went to treatment and thought that I was just going to be healed. Like, boom, you're done, and that's it. And people talked about AA, they talked about a community, they talked about all that, and that wasn't for me. The weird people did that. So came back, kept my job, started working as a school resource officer, which is my kids are my passion. Which and honestly, school resource officer was a job that I wanted for the longest time, and I had the opportunity. And as an alcoholic, one thing that we're really good at is tearing everything important down around you.
Mm.
And I could barely get to work on time with my alcohol problem in the evening because I had relapsed and struggled. I think I stayed sober like 2.5 months after my first round of treatment. And the wheels completely came off the bus again. And then you hear this if you're watching this and you're in recovery. If you've never heard this before, it's true. Alcoholism is a progressive disease. Like, you're never fixed. You always have to put in work. And your addiction of whatever it is doing push ups in the corner, just waiting for you to fail. Like, you'll hear a common denominator with people who are in recovery where every time they relapse, every time they mess up, it gets worse and it gets worse and it gets worse. And that's what happened with me. Um, Almost a year to the day of coming back from treatment that first time, I had an intervention done on me and I was back down. I went to Orange County this time. First time I was in Palm Springs, second time in Orange County. And, again, I remember flying down, whatever. This is a funny story because we're all sober now. But my old man bought me we flew first class and drank our way down for him to drop me off at rehab. And the whole time I'm going, I'm like, I really want to get well. I really want to get better. But there's no way I could talk about my drug addiction. There's no way. And so I land in California, and I'm like, man, these people who go to counseling school and therapist school, they just don't understand me. And I get picked up by this tatted Vato Mexican dude who's sober,
Hi,
who
people.
left the cartel. And he picked me up, and he was like the coolest, baddest gangster I've ever met. And that was my first, like, I might be able to do this. So I go to treatment. I go to detox first, feel like absolute garbage. They put me in a room with this cop who said he had a habit and he was my roommate. We were detoxing together. And the whole time I thought he was an undercover Fed because he had the same habit, he had the same addiction, he had the same hustle. And I was like, this dude's a cop. Like, they're trying to get me to tell all my stories, whatever. So we leave detox, go to inpatient, and every time we started doing groups, he would cry. Like, he would just bawl all the time. And I'm like, this dude's real. Like, this guy's like, he's got a real problem, just like me. And that was an epiphany that I had, uh, that I could do this again. And what that did, and this is why people's stories are so important if you're watching this, um, because that unlocked that next level. Like, now I could start getting honest. Now I can start getting vulnerable, and I'm not the only one. And
Yes.
So yeah, I read the Book of Four Agreements. If I can plug something for, and I don't read. That's not my thing. But it's a really thin book. It's really easy, and it's an incredible piece of literature that really hit home for me. So yeah, March 30th of 2019 is my sobriety date. My last 2 days in treatment, one of my mentors, his name is Randy, he's an amazing dude. He owned the first treatment center I went to and just so happened to be like the executive director of the second one. And he goes, dude, you have a wild story. Have you ever thought about being an interventionist? And I'm like, no, like, we'll drag people to rehab? No way. And he goes, let me ask you something. Would you be here without an intervention? And absolutely not. I was going to go to intensive outpatient. I was going to do classes online. There's no way I would have went to a inpatient place if I didn't have an intervention done on me. So I'm like, sure, what does that look like? And he goes, I know a dude named Brad Lamb. He's the interventionist for Oprah, interventionist for Dr. Phil. I can get you with him and learn this new way of doing interventions. It's called invitational interventions. It's done out of love. It's not put a bag over their head and throw them in a van. It's not yelling and screaming. It's an invitation to save your own life. And it's called invitational interventions. And so when I got out of treatment, I went through that, met Brad, got all trained up, and yeah, that's kind of been my thing. The whole ketone thing, prove it, prove it is what pays the bills for me. Intervention, I kind of do that to be of service. Obviously, there's some
Yeah.
money in that, um, but those are kind of the things that I do now. I run a safety and security team for my kids' school here in Colorado. And what I've learned in the life of recovery is like to get outside of yourself and be of service. And I really, really am doing everything I possibly can to do that now. So, um, is that a good start?
Yes. I
Okay.
mean, that's amazing. That's amazing. To hear your full story, I've heard, I mean, obviously we've known each other for a little while now, and I know most of your story. And to hear the full story and to see where you are now is incredible. It's incredible. Um, you just have, I think the key thing that you said in there that sticks out for me is you have to get honest and you have to be honest with yourself. And, that's hard. Even on the other side, Aaron and Justin are familiar with the addiction side of it. My recovery is on the other side, those affected by addiction.
Mm-hmm.
And my journey is almost identical to Justin's as far as the Navy goes. But I was the complete extreme opposite. I didn't touch nothing because I was terrified of it because of what I had saw and been exposed to and went through as a kid. And even to this day, my it's almost an irrational fear of it that I have because I know how slippery that slope is. So to see you and to know your story and to know that there's hope is it's incredible. It's incredible. So it gives me the warm and fuzzies for sure. And I'll drop a tear in a second. But yeah,
Don't,
like
because I'll start
Justin's
crying
like,
too.
don't do it, don't do
Yeah.
it. So go ahead, Aaron. What do you got?
Yeah, I mean, I love that, Justin, and I've heard your story. We've had a lot of times to chat back and forth, and life was pretty miserable drinking, and life is so much different today. Um, I know I've known you for a couple years. I've seen a huge change in you. Um, I've seen a huge change in myself. Um, And I find no better joy in, spreading what I've learned to other people in hopes that they can um, find it too, whatever it is for them. Whether it's 12-step recovery, whether they choose to use faith or some kind of church based recovery to get clean and sober. But um, when I was out there drinking and using, I never, we always think about ourselves and we don't think about the people that we affect by us using. And, I've never been married and I don't have kids, but I do have a family that, um, to be blunt, I didn't give two shits about when I was out there using. Um, I thought about myself, and it wasn't until I got sober and work in a program of recovery that I was able to see how much that I affected them. Um, and it sucks, but then I had to learn to forgive myself for that as well. So, Justin, if you can, Tabitha touched briefly on it. If you can talk about um, from your aspect of how it affected people around you, friends, family, children,
Mhm.
whatever.
Yeah. So, as an interventionist, my goal is to get somebody to treatment, right? And I don't care if I have to pull the guy away from the family and say, dude, just go. Like, it's 60, 90, 30 days. Um, just go. Like, just make grandma happy. And if it don't work, it don't work. And the goal of that is to have the epiphanies along the way, right? The path is not lit until you start walking it, period, end of story. And if I can get somebody into treatment to get their head right, separate them from drugs and alcohol, that's a start.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of, in my story, mentioned these moments that where you hit the next level. Like I believe life is literally next level, and don't burn it down and don't slide. One of my biggest epiphanies was we would at treatment jump in a van. I call it the druggy buggy, and we'd hit meetings in the town. And we would go to NAs and AA. My first treatment, I left early. I didn't tell this part. I'll come back, I promise, to what you asked. My roommate, like 5 days before I graduated from my first rehab center, was a guy that I sold dope to undercover. And I was like, wow, dude, look at the full circle. We jump in the druggy buggy. The first meeting we go to, he stands up and he goes, like, can you believe my roommate's an undercover cop? And I used that as an out. I went back to the treatment facility. I said, the guy who I ended up working for later knows this story. And I used that as an excuse to leave early. So I had my relapse was already planned,
Mm-hmm.
done. But we would jump in the van and go to this meeting once a week called Solace for Hope. Look it up. It's incredible. I'd like to get them started and help her. But it is family members from addicts and alcoholics who have died, who
Mm.
share their story in an AA platform type thing, where they're like, this is a picture of my son. This is what I saw from my side. This is how it affected me. Tears, crying, the most powerful meeting I've ever been to. And that is a huge part of my recovery. The collateral damage that happens around an addict and alcoholic, the tornado of shit that we create trying to manipulate and to control is horrible. Let alone getting sober and hearing people tell stories about what you did and what it looked like from the other side. It's absolutely devastating. So I think that meetings like that, or it's really hard for an addict and alcoholic to hear it from the ones who are giving them shit about their drugs and alcohol. Like you can't see it that way. But if you're really looking for a solution and you really are open to figuring it out, listening to other people's story about an addict and an alcoholic and the trauma that is causing is horrible. But the problem is, as an interventionist, is this codependency that occurs between the loved one and the addict, the loved one and the alcoholic. This they almost feed on the chaos that they're creating because they have that fix it mentality. Like they're just used to it. They've done it for years. And it creates this crazy revolving cycle because when I go help a client, one of the hardest groups of people to work with is not really the client, it's the family. Creating boundaries, um, and being able to support them during that process to where they stick to them. Because you let an addict and an alcoholic move a boundary, dude, you're ours. We own you. It's over. So I think the people around you, if you can somehow gift them with the vision of what they're really doing to those people, is one of the biggest keys to actually getting so.
That's incredible.
Yeah, I love that. You touched on so many talking points there. I mean,
I know, right? He really did, though.
Don't ask me
Yeah.
to repeat it.
yeah, you talked on the codependency, which is that's huge. Like,
I can tell you for me, the codependency, like with my mother, for example, I would have given anything, I would have done anything, I would have broke the law, I would have done anything if I could have kept her sober. And it didn't. Now looking back at it, I realize how much my part was in that. Now that I'm in my own recovery, just like you said with the addict, when it's coming at you like this from someone that you are as close to you, my dad could not tell me any different. Like I was going to save her life because that was my job as her
Mm-hmm.
child. And it now, I mean, she died. Like what was that for? So that codependency. And then when that happened, I didn't know what to do. Like I didn't know what to do with myself after that. Like it was like the object had just poof vanished and it just left a mess, obviously. So that codependency is, yeah, that is real. That's a struggle for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's because we kind of talked about this earlier, but like complex trauma that is created by the alcoholic and addict, that what that creates, the person who's codependent to it, is like we were just talking. Most of those people who are affected have been working so hard on trying to fix this other person. When that's gone or that problem's over, they don't even know who they are. Like their identity was trying to help this person, this family, whatever. And when that's gone, you're left with like, now what am I supposed to do? Which now is starting a whole nother generational curse. Um, and the things that come along with that. So yeah, it's not just like you're just plugging the holes if you don't
Yeah.
address it like the big picture.
Yeah. It's the ripple effect. Like we talk about the ripple effect in a positive light in
Yeah.
ketones, and this is exactly the same, but it's so negative. And obviously we all know that, but it's the same thing. It's the ripple effect. I've bled my trauma onto my kids, and
Mm-hmm.
I've had to help my kids heal through that. So yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
it's
Mm.
it's definitely real. I mean, it's crazy. Justin, you talked a bit about relapse. Um, let's let's dive into the reality of relapse and the importance and resilience to get continued support.
Yeah. So being in recovery, Aaron, you could probably attest to this. Very few people that I talk to that have this solid recovery life got sober the first time, and I've been sober ever since the first day I hit an AA room or whatever, right? Like that's rare.
It's very
And
rare.
people don't understand that this isn't a green light to relapse by any means because you'll die. Like right now, relapsing today is worse than it was 5 years ago. It's
Mm-hmm.
totally different, especially with drugs. And a lot of states have, like when the Washington state law passed where you could pick up liquor at Walgreens, when the moms could just go pick up diapers and drink a 99 banana shot, it was lights out.
Yep.
So um, I think where was I at?
You were talking about the
Relapse
relapse
and
and
So
resiliency.
yeah,
uh,
my thing is if just like working out, just like changing anything in your life, just I mean, I'll work out for 3 or 4 months and then I'll go a couple weeks without it and I have to start that program again and jump back in. That is life. There is
mhm.
nothing that, whether it's your business, whether it's your fitness, whether it's addiction, whether it's alcoholism, as soon as you identify it, you have to jump back on the horse. And getting caught up in that itty bitty pity party about what I didn't do or I can't believe or whatever, that has to go.
Yeah.
Like your relapse, and once you identify that in your head, then you have to jump right back in. That's why the newcomer is always welcome. That's why my home group is a recovery center. I do that for me. I do it to go help people, but that room that I go to every single week at the Denver Rescue Mission is full of people just like me who tried to go out and do it their way one more time. And if I drink one more time, if I use a drug one more time, that's me. And so relapse is part of almost everybody's story. Like if you're watching this or listening to this and you've relapsed and you're sitting at home, feeling sick to your stomach, then get back on the horse. Like make a phone call, talk to some people who have done it before, because what you'll find out is you're not so special. Like
Yep.
when you say people don't understand, dude, they're all the same. I mean, I got a pilot buddy who he shares his story. He smoked meth out of a bubble while flying and was paranoid and put his head below the dashboard of the airplane because he thought people were watching. I got
Wow.
police officers with wild stories. It's no different than somebody who's homeless living in a tent. It's
Yep.
exactly the same, a different demographic, but everybody has those same struggles. So I think immediately identifying your relapse and getting back on the horse and doing the best you can, whether it's smoking, whether it's chewing, whether it's opiates, relapse is more than likely going to be part of your story.
Yeah. I'm at the biggest thing I hear from people, including myself, because I had 5 years of sobriety and ended up going back. Just didn't have that mental defense against it, and but it was the ego or the not wanting to happen to come back after having some time and saying, "Oh, I have to start all over again." You know, drop that shit. It really doesn't matter. I mean, it's a matter of life and death, especially nowadays. With fentanyl out there, and um, it's just crazy. And you know, um, Justin, what do you think? There's a pretty big stigma out there about around addiction and recovery. Um, you want to give us some insight on that?
Just in general, the stigma of addiction recovery.
Yeah, I mean, you hear a lot about, well, why can't they just simply stop drinking? Why can't they
Right.
stop, smoking that bubble or whatever? It is a mental disease. It's like cancer, you know.
Absolutely. I think more than ever, though, and I could be wrong because I'm just, still early in my recovery,
Mhm.
I feel like it's not accepted, but people are willing to listen because the thing that fentanyl has done, it's affected everybody. Like it doesn't matter. Somebody knows somebody, their friend's kid, their friend. Maybe they were struggling at one time, especially the way that doctors were prescribing for just minor surgeries. A lot of people now know what that feels like. Like, even if they're like, I had to throw my pills away, they made me feel funny. I'm like, dude, you were doing them wrong. But I think that most people kind of get it more than ever. And if they don't, like if they're really got that wall up, being an interventionist, I kind of want to hear their story. I kind of
Mhm.
want to hear, what do you got going on? Because like with Prove It, right? All it is the same problems, the same program with food. It's the same exact thing. It's what are they doing to cope with the real issue? So if you are listening to this and you've made it this far, probably there's somebody in your life that you're listening to this for, or maybe it's yourself. But, um, I might be a little naive, but more than ever, especially with social media, and it might just be my feed, that stigma is slowly going down. And it still needs to continue because in law enforcement, a lot of guys, I didn't know this, 1 in 4 police officers, firefighters, medics, 1 in 4 has a habit: alcohol, drugs, something. To me, that stat is incredible.
Yeah.
And so it still needs to be dropped. It still needs to be lowered to the point of where we can immediately, as a community, see a problem and feel comfortable to reach out and start pointing them in the right direction.
Right.
I will say this around the stigma. Um, I carried it for a long time because of the trauma and everything else that was associated with it. Um, it's only until recently, probably, and until I met you and I met Aaron and people that were healthy and that could say, yeah, I had an issue. Like I had an addiction. I was an alcoholic or, whatever the case is, that I started to change the way that I looked at it. And even now, like as recent as what, 3 days ago, Aaron, 2 days ago,
Mhm.
I just got in my recovery program, I got my sponsor and we are working through step one. And the third question is, do you believe that alcoholism is a disease? So, you know me, I call the bestie and I'm like, listen, this don't make a lot of sense to me. A person doesn't choose to have cancer. A person doesn't, you choose to be an alcoholic. So we had the conversation later that day. I removed the word because I'm still working through it. I removed the word alcoholism and I suffer from chronic depression as a result of all the things.
Mm-hmm.
And I put the word depression in there and how depression affected myself and everyone around me. And that's how I finally got the light to come on about how alcoholism is a disease. Yes, I believe it's hereditary. Yes, I think it is a disease that affects any and everything around that person. And it has to be talked about. It has to be brought out in the light because the dark is what is killing people. The dark and not having the community or the people in your life that you can go to and say, "Hey, this is getting out of control. Like I might need some help." In this process, I've realized that I was part of the issue creating the stigma instead of in my mind thinking that I was helping by not doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, same thing. If you're listening and you're the person that is, or watching, and you're the person that is affected by the addict or the alcoholic, don't be so judgy. Don't be so judgy and don't sit up on your high horse. Like, I did that and it did not help anything. It just made me more angry and built up walls that I'm still trying to tear down. So, give them the opportunity to come to you and ask for help. Be a safe place, be a safe person. And you might get, we might get different results when we talk about it out in the open. So, yeah, that stigma is, it's got to come to the light. We got to go through the dark to get to the light. So, yeah,
Absolutely. And
yeah,
that's even for people who are in so like when a lot of people go to treatment, and I call it getting gurued, right? You have a therapist, psychiatrist, counselors, you have this team of people, you're learning all these new ways. The program that I am, literally creates a filter, and you could take every problem in your life and run it through this filter and get a pretty good answer when you talk to another person on the other side. You cannot leave a 30-day or 60, 90. The program that I help out is an 8 to 12 month program, and
Wow.
expect the people around you to get it.
Right.
You can't. And unfortunately, it's very rare, honestly, whether you can believe this or not. Uh, but sometimes people around you don't get it. And more often than not, though, those aren't your people. But it will take time. I mean, you more than likely created a lot of damage. And in the program I'm in, you get to go through this process where they call them amends. And
Mm.
that's more for the addict and alcoholic themselves than they fully understand. But when you do that the right way, the energy that comes from the other side gets you to a place where there is more understanding. Um, and if you are one of those people who have your walls up, then if somebody ever comes to you and says, "Hey, I'm working a program, I got to go through this," just hear them out, and
Yeah.
don't pre-think what you're going to say. Like, listen to what they have to say and how they say it, and then cross that next bridge, because that is true. I mean, that's one of um, that's a big wall that people, when they first get sober, they think about how that's going to be. And
Yeah.
there are programs, whether celebrate recovery, there's all kinds of other programs, but the idea is to start at step one and worry about step one, which will set you up for the rest of it.
Yeah. I mean, every program has a 12-step program, and whether you're in recovery or not, I think the world could benefit from doing the 12 steps.
Zero doubts.
You
Yeah.
know, from coming from somebody that's affected from by drugs and alcohol, there are resources out there for you. Um, just because you're not the alcoholic or drug addict, don't think that there isn't help out there for you to understand and how to set up boundaries and whatnot for those around you, family or whatever, that drink and drug.
Mm-hmm.
This is it's a it's a vicious cycle that affects everybody, and I wish there was more policy and advocacy surrounding that in politics nowadays. I mean, I think mental health is a huge thing too, that we briefly touched on. That I think more funding and advocacy probably needs to go through to mental health and rehabilitation, rather than locking people up in jail for
Oh, I agree a
you know
100%.
drinking and driving. And so, you have any thoughts on that, Justin?
Well, I do. I believe in that more than most, because being in law enforcement, being part of this brotherhood and this unbreakable bond. Even later in my career, mental health was a big conversation, and we'd do classes, and your admin would be like, "We're there for you," and all of this. To this day, I got a buddy up there in Washington, bigwig. Um, there was an allegation put against him that wasn't true. Later found out not to be true. But the second it happened, everybody unplugged. Few ride or dies stayed plugged in with him. In my instance, right, I was struggling. I was a disaster. I probably was scary to talk to, but everybody completely turned their back. Nobody, honestly, probably didn't know how to handle it. And what I go back to with law enforcement, especially, like, if 1 in 4 of these people got a problem, right, and everybody's just rolling around hiding in the shadows, that I believe the policies of an agency should be set up to a way of somebody being able to safely get help, to be
Yeah.
safely guided to a solution. When you guys were just talking, Aaron, when you were just talking, saying, "Hey, there's resources out there." If you're listening to this, if you were to take your top 5 problems and put them on the table, there's a solution for every one of them. You just got to talk to the right person. A clear-cut roadmap to the solution. Not the if, ands, or buts, or I'm different, you don't understand. That's not true. There is a solution out there. And the program I'm in often talks about picking up the phone and talking to somebody. Once you can identify a safe person to talk to, that's why it's good for me. I'm an ex-law enforcement. If I talk to a cop who's got a problem, if you're listening to this, you got a pending DUI charge, or maybe you got a habit, or you got a water bottle of vodka under your patrol seat and you're drinking that on the way home, you could call me and I don't have to tell anybody. I can just start, we could provide that solution, but there's not a lot of places like that. Like even the ones that the department provides, everybody's so paranoid that, the admin's going to find out, or, they just can't divulge it. And the foundation of every recovery is the capacity to be honest. And that has to happen in a safe place. And even though it's identified at a safe place, the person struggling has to know that that's a safe place.
That's
Very
a
good. I like that.
staggering statistic. 1 in 4. So one of us, no, we're 3. I'm counting wrong. 1 in 4 people. Wow. That's 25%.
So you walk into a Starbucks and you see a couple cops and firefighters, 2 tables sitting there drinking coffee. You can go, 1 and 2 of you need some help.
Yeah. That's crazy. That's crazy.
It's insane.
And the fact that it's not talked about and is not,
Well, look at the job.
Is even, yeah, absolutely.
Look at the job. So this is the thing. Everybody's like, our military veterans. I'm a military veteran, been forward deployed, done a lot of cool stuff. That is real, right? And what does everybody do? Open their arms and we'll take care of them and da-da-da-da-da, okay? If you take somebody who was forward deployed and they have PTSD, if you were to add up their firefight time, it's less than like 8 minutes, okay? Of the thing that activated the PTSD, or a lot of PTSD is actually past trauma that is then activated by a traumatic situation. But okay, give them 10 minutes. What does a cop do for 20 something years? Every single day. Like there was a time I remember doing CPR on a dude. He didn't make it, called out of service and went home and was eating dinner with my family within an hour. No debrief, no conversation, no how are you doing. And that is repetitive exposure to extreme situations. Like,
yeah.
How many cops and firefighters who are retired do you want their life?
Right.
Not very many. Their relationship stats are horrible. They're usually super pessimistic. They just have this weird edge to them. And they're the ones that we really need to pay attention to, because those are also the ones that are going to show up to your house if you call 911.
Right.
Yeah. Gosh, yeah. That's, yeah.
Things that make
It's
you
just,
go,
Yeah, it's staggering. It's staggering to know that. Honestly, it really is. Like, Justin, do you think that there are things that, like myself, someone on the other side of it, what are some things that we can do to help support and, I don't want to say advocate, or well, maybe advocate. What can we do to support and advocate for the addict or the alcoholic, or the person in our lives that is struggling? What can we do to help support them? What is the best thing you think that we can do?
First step is create boundaries for yourself. Okay. Create boundaries that are real and that you can hold to. Okay. To keep yourself safe, to be able to keep the wheels on the bus of that family living situation. But your job is to identify the resources and get it right up to them. Because we were just talking about this. If the wife is nagging about you're drinking too much, or the family members are like, you're a mess, why don't you just stop? you're probably not going to be the one they listen to, even if you provided them the perfect solution. It
Right.
just doesn't work. You're going to have a mouthpiece that has influence and credibility to say what you want to say through them. And that's where me as a interventionist, that's my plug of why you need an interventionist. Like I will be able to communicate that and identify what you're doing that's toxic, that's
Right.
probably enabling the situation. So aggressively find resources and put them in front of them, because you can only walk them right up to the front and say, hey, which one do you want to pick? But short of that, to almost sometimes, depending on the situation, do the opposite of what you've been doing if it's not working. And because there's a lot of anger there, there's a lot of resentments there, and getting them, because you want to be part of the solution, but more than likely you're not going to be able to hold their hand through that, through detox, through inpatient, through outpatient, through intensive outpatient, whatever it is. Because on the other side, you want to be, their cheerleader. You want to be there and say, I love you. I'm glad you're doing this. And sometimes the beginning of that recovery journey, there's even more resentments created trying to get them there.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
so, yeah, I would say if you're a loved one listening to this, get a hold of some people who have been through it before. And just like a counselor, some are good, perfect, some aren't. Some will make it worse, but start getting those resources. And the more tools you can put out on the table to pick from, the better.
I agree. I agree.
Love that.
Yeah. Well, you guys, listen, we could probably go all night with this. Like this is a topic that all three of us are just super passionate about, and we know that. And this is the question I have for both of you. Um if someone is listening or watching this right now and just needs that that message and just needs that hope that things can be better and needs to reach out for hope, what would you both like to say to them?
Go ahead, Aaron.
I would say, you know, um, if you know somebody that's in recovery, reach out to them. Look for resources that are out there, to get clean and sober, whether it's, church based, whether it's Justin over there, or,
Yeah,
comment in this video. Um,
absolutely.
you know,
Absolutely that. Yeah.
I'd love to chat with you and have a conversation if you're struggling with alcohol or drugs. But definitely give yourself a chance and have an open mind. Um, there's all kinds of A programs out there um, that is huge support and has a community that surrounds it, that you can get all kinds of support. So just give yourself a shot.
Justin?
Justin.
So if you're listening to this and you're struggling, I want you to know you're not alone. Like, you're not alone, and it does get better. If I were to have wrote down on a piece of paper in my last treatment stint all my hopes and desires with no limitations, I would cut myself short. I would cut myself short. And whether that's economic insecurity is something we talk about, like, well, how am I going to get a job and do whatever? So many people have habits right now that you could literally get sober and your mess is your message. Whether it's helping somebody going through the same thing you're going through, and I don't want to future trip so far that scares you, but just know on your journey, your new doors are going to open. But you have to talk to somebody. Like, you're not going to be able to go online and click a link and figure it out. You're not going to go to Reddit and listen to a bunch of stories and get sober and stick your recovery. If you actually have a habit that is affecting your life and your family, your future is a recovery lifestyle. It's not, where can I go and get fixed? Okay. Alcohol and drugs are literally just a symptom. Aaron hit on it earlier. It's a mental health problem. Doesn't mean you're crazy. It just means that you use something to cope when things get rough. Or maybe, it was fun while you did it, but it's not fun anymore. Like it's a burden. It's something that you need to wake up and get well with. We've all been there. So reach out to somebody, you know, reach out, start the conversation. It, like for me, I tell people this all the time. When you get a hold of me, I'm not going to try to talk you into rehab. With my other business, I'm like, listen, just let's start the conversation. We'll figure out the rest later. Um, because most of the time, that first conversation isn't, I'm ready to go. It's never that. It's, what are my options? How's it going to work? I'm scared. I want to try it my way. Listen, with the drugs that are out there right now, no matter what you're doing, with fentanyl rolling around there, you get one hot batch, it's over. So many people are kissing their kids goodnight and saying goodbye to their family members one last time, and they don't even know it yet. So it is very important that you start that conversation and start at least getting the options of the doors that you can walk to through the future.
Love that. Thank you, Justin.
Love it. Love it.
Been an
Love it. Love
amazing.
it. Love it.
Love you guys very much.
Love you too, buddy.
We love you.
It's been an amazing.
Aaron, take us out. All right.
I was about to.
Okay.
It's been an amazing episode. Thank you again, Justin. We'll definitely have to have you on again. So until next time, please like, subscribe, and share, and don't be afraid to reach out to us with feedback and topic ideas. We are here to offer hope to everyone, and we cannot do this without you. Until next week, I'm Aaron.
I'm Tab.
This is the Friendship Frequency. This is who we are. This is what we do. Have a great night. Peace.
Bye.